Here, I'm going to quickly introduce the panelists. If you're going to talk, please step outside. Oz Sultan, who's somebody who's written for Techonomy on this very topic, and some of you may have read his article, quite trenchant article about combating ISIS in social media. Hey, Simone, wherever you are, quiet down the room if you whatever you have to do. No, you got to go tell them to. And anyway, Oz is a social media marketing expert who is also very politically engaged and has worked in political campaigns and a lot of marketing efforts for major companies across the board. He's also a very active American Muslim in trying to convey what's really real about the Muslim experience in the world, and he's done a very good job. He's often on television talking about that, and he's quite insightful on those matters. Then the other two guys up here are quite different, although they work together. All three of these guys work together on the issue we're going to be discussing, so I want to hear how they explain that. But John Melcon, who's to Oz's left, leads the Center for the Study of Civil Military Operations at West Point and is responsible for the strategic vision of that. And what he's really interested in, and I think I really want to hear him talk to you about, because it was surprising to me when we talked, is the idea that the whole notion of military warfare is changing to become more inclusive, in effect, and that really even the idea that we have to think of the military over here and civil society over here may be outdated. So that's a very interesting notion. And finally, Colonel, wait, what's your first name? I didn't get John Graham, yes. Yeah, John and John, it's right. John Graham, he's West Point's Associate Dean for Research and Chief Scientist and former Director of the Network Science Center there. And he is just retiring from the Army right now, right?
2 more weeks, yeah.
How many more weeks? Two more weeks?
A couple more.
Okay,
yeah.
Well, thank you for being here. I know it's a hectic time. So I think
what I wanted to do was just maybe like a 2-minute introduction to all of
I was going to say, Oz is going to start with a couple of quick thoughts and a couple slides, and you're going to make it fast, right?
Very fast.
Okay, good.
So everyone here is familiar with the Arab Spring, a bunch of things that have happened over the past couple of years, but not a lot of people are familiar with what terrorism is or how terrorism's changed. So it's gone from where it literally was like a book handed in between two different people, like, oh, you want to start a terrorist group? Great, here's a book. To in the 1990s, Al-Qaeda had basically started going into the digital foray. And with ISIS, what we have done is we have gone full digital. So what I want you to think about is Publicis has maybe about 800 people working in social media. ISIS has 1,000, okay? And this is globally. And so the entire nature of warfare has changed. The entire nature of engagement has changed. And so what did that mean? So what we did was I basically personal money, working with a couple of quants, have spent about 2 years worth of research figuring out, everyone keeps saying it's Muslim people are joining ISIS. Well, who exactly is joining ISIS? And what we came up with was the profile of the Jillennial. So these are jihadi millennials across the globe who are largely in Western countries, including the United States. What you're looking at is simple factors that haven't really been addressed for a long period of time. They are disenfranchised. They are typically second or third generation if they are minorities. They are secular, and they are looking for meaning. And ISIS baits for this. Why? Because ISIS is basically Jim Jones with guns. In order to fight them, what have we been doing? So the way that we were doing this through social for a long period of time was, what do most brands do? What did most brands do when they failed for a long period of time? They're like, I need you to like my page, right? So the problem that we've had in spending billions of dollars out there is that there are people who are thinking that, okay, well, let's create a profile, not necessarily based on the information that we should have, and we talk about these things called face sitters, and they're getting people, if America is Coke and ISIS is Pepsi, they're getting people to like Coke while ISIS is getting them to drink Pepsi. And if you're not going to stop that process, nothing is going to change. And so this is going to be left up for the entire talk, and we can talk about this later. And here's the problem that's happening, because this is not just a problem for nation states. This is not just a problem for small countries. This is a problem for corporations and multinationals on an international level on an unprecedented basis. Your brand can be hijacked by ISIS. Toyota has already had to deal with this, okay? So what we've been working together with the Center for Civil and Military Studies at West Point is, how do you take social media counterterrorism and make it a brand new discipline that should be taught alongside a bunch of other disciplines? Because what's happened is marketing and terrorism got married and had an ugly baby, and we have to deal with it.
Wow, that's good. Well said. I don't think most people I mean, obviously we all ask ourselves, why did this terrorist or that terrorist decide to go do this crazy thing? And you're saying that many or most of them just saw something online and got excited about it because they were pissed off already with life?
They were pissed.
Punk rock, you're famous.
Okay, yeah. So here's the thing. Everyone in this room, name one thing that's edgy right now. Trump is edgy. Okay,
thing, right?
Punk rock is edgy, all right? We don't have punk rock anymore. What we have is cults like ISIS selling their brand of punk rock online. Okay. And that's exciting. And the problem is the 1 and the 4 on this. This is where ISIS basically makes people make the pledge twice. And the only other people who do this are cults and the Boy Scouts. And they're not the Boy Scouts, so...
Okay, so let me just switch over to Colonel John. I will say Colonel John,
Sure,
can I call you that? Okay. So why are you up here with Oz, and what is it that you guys do together, given what he said? Because I think he contextualized the problem quite eloquently.
Right. So first I want to caveat, yeah, I am active duty military, and so I have some caveats I get to say or not say today. So I have kind of some notes I get to stick to, because I was pretty brief before I got here about what not to say, because we have some sensitive areas we're going to talk about. I, like John, did our time early in the Army as airborne rangers, did things like that, and then we graduated up to doing what we're doing now, which is looking for bad guys, trying to influence the battlefield through other methods. And so we moved in that. My space that I operate is in networks. And so where Oz and I actually butt heads, that's kind of what we try to do. And that ties to what we're trying to do in the government, we're trying to do in the military, is these public-private partnerships. We need the outside ideas that will butt up against our ways of thinking. And mine has been formed from multiple tours downrange in different places. And then trying my ideas out there. And then now he has the new ideas we're bringing to bear. Now, a couple things, though, that I want to throw in that I somewhat disagree with Oz on, is because my science is network science, and what I'm looking at is I look at the nodes. I'm not doing your networks or computer networks. I do social networks. And what I'm looking at is the nodes, the relationships, and it's basically the matrix algebra that we all took from lesson 3 to 8 back in entry-level algebra. Simple matrix algebra that has been taken to the next level. And I think it's the basis of a lot of machine learning and the directions we're going there that we talked about earlier. But what I disagree with Oz on, and we work hard on this, is there a relationship between what's going on online? What is your online behavior translating to real-world behavior? And some of the arguments that I see and we're constantly looking at, so one that I love is that just recently happened. The cast of Hamilton got up and kind of gave a speech to Vice President Pence following their show, and I think it made all the news. If you missed it, then you weren't watching the channel that was up here before us. And then they said, well, how many of you voted? 70 members of the cast were up there on the stage. How many of you voted? And it was 6. Wow. 6 members of the cast had voted. So there was a real difference between action and the like. And as we go through, we can find that example over and over and over. Your online behavior, that identity that we talked about earlier today, is a different identity than you might have in real life. And we're looking right now for a way for those things to go together. Why is this hard? From the science. The science is why this is hard. It's not your computer science, which my degrees in Carnegie Mellon is in computer science, but our problem is with the social sciences. And where we are is cognitive science, where I did some of my work. I've got to account for about 80, 90% of the variance to be published. So I will say, hey, grasshopper, pick this out of my hand, and I can predict how fast you'll pick it out of my hand. And I can do that pretty well. Good job. Yeah.
But I think that's, where we've had these conversations is, so again, online behavior, offline persona, right? Could be completely different things. We've seen a lot of Reddit stories that it's completely different. But what happens when you're talking about ISIS, and not just ISIS, Boko Haram, Jamaat Islamiyah, ISIS-K, which is Waliyat Khorasan, which is in Afghanistan and northern Pakistan, not Waziristan, what used to be NWFP now, is that as opposed to going online and shit posting and doing a bunch of stuff that you normally would do, what they do is they make you make a pledge to them. When you come in, they initially make you make a pledge to them, and that's the first thing. Then the next thing they do is instead of you saying you have an online community, they sell you your new friends. Okay, so standard cult recruitment tactics. Beyond selling you your new friends, they then tell you that people that you do know who are Muslims, if you do know Muslims, you have to, and other people of other religions, you have to excommunicate them. And then they make you indoctrinate yourself again by pledging allegiance. So this is, and I think this is where we've been kind of, butting heads, but getting to on this, is that through the social nodes, what you see as traditional behavior is disintermediated by this cult-type behavior. And you're not necessarily seeing this recruitment just with ISIS. You're seeing this with Antifa. You're seeing it with a variety of other groups that are out.
Antifa, what is that?
Antifa is the anti-First Amendment groups that are out there. So this is what we would call the extreme left that has fragmented off from the Democratic Party. They follow similar patterns. I'm trending, and we're doing a lot of data analysis on them now. But it's a similar recruitment strategy.
Okay, but I want to hear more what the Army thinks in terms of, we think of the Army as having guns, right? And it sounds
do.
like, and you have guns.
We got the biggest
And
guns in the fold.
Both of these guys have carried around a lot of guns. In fact, this John, I don't know about that John, but this John was one of the first 100 people in Afghanistan and has seen some serious combat. To what degree are you now thinking, if ISIS is the enemy, and other groups like it and people like it? I mean, it's not just one thing. Obviously, Oz just listed a number of different groups, and I know there's 40 or 50 of these that are of substantial scale worldwide. How much is the Army thinking that your job is, at least in part, becoming fighting these people online? Is that essentially what you were starting to say before, either one of you?
Well, let me jump in right now and say that I don't want to be the wet blanket in the room or whatever else, but I am the slow move of bureaucracy. It's called the United States military. It's the Department of Defense and things we have going on now. And so the great ideas that we do, like we have a wonderful incubator at West Point, and the opportunity, because we are a degree-granting baccalaureate institution, that we can actually do that, and we're sort of Army light, so we can engage in these conversations. The big Army has a hard time. I mean, it's a monolith. I mean, it turns only at like small azimuths, and so we're always trying to figure out how do we get ahead of these things and how do we do it. And that's the frustration that I have, and what I'm trying to promote, particularly with our center, and what we're doing right now is how do we actually get involved in these public-private partnerships, as John alluded to earlier. How do we involve our proponents in business and technology and other places to actually bring it in? Because the days are gone when the skunk works out in the West, when Rand Corporation can actually build beautiful, spy machines that run the air or whatever else. They're gone now. I mean, it's an incubator that happens in a garage, in a basement, someplace else. And so I think it's the public sector, or the private sector actually, can bring it to the public side. So how do we integrate that? How do we do that, and how do we stay ahead of it? And how do we integrate that into the way in which we educate? How they do it to the way in which we, because I'm thinking of .plmf. Help me with that one. Doctrine, operations, training, something military.
See how much we're committed to it.
He's not in the Army anymore, so he can forget.
Yeah, it's awful. I mean, but this is it. This is how we get caught in these things, or whatever else, because we can't integrate fast enough. And so I think the key thing, particularly with this issue, is that we only have so many things we can do right now. President Trump just put together a budget that has gone forward and included $8.5 billion that went towards, particularly towards the PACOM and the Pacific Command. And there's all tranches that go in other places and everything else. And either way, like we don't have enough money, we don't have enough time, we don't have enough space to do it. And so,
Well, this is where I want to throw in. Go to Oz's model that's on the wall, and I love the question that came to our predecessor. Hey, you're in multiple countries. Get out there and spread the right message. So I'm in the government. Can I, as a member of the government or the government, go spread the right message? In the military, I have some issues with that, right? I got some authorities that say I can't do that, and I can't even experiment on it. To do what Oz has laid out as a model is, from a academic perspective, a social experiment like that is against academic and, for that matter, government rules for me to conduct that experiment on you.
In what sense? What is it that you couldn't do?
So, can I inject? Has your company ever done a phishing experiment on you? So they
sent you a fake
intentionally
email?
sent you a fish to see if you were stupid enough to click on it, right? To do that, they went through multiple levels, and they could get away with it because you signed a bunch of consents when you joined your company.
yeah.
We can't do that in the world. So to test these models, we need folks that are engaged in marketing, folks that are engaged in these kind of fields in the public to tell us this model works, this model doesn't work. Because we're going after ideas, and Oz has laid it out very nicely, of a cult theory, a cult model. We need those tested with the proxies that you have. And the proxies you have are marketing. What shoes am I going to buy? Does my online behavior translate to real-world action in some form?
So is one of the reasons why you two guys would want to speak in a context like this because you want people from the business and tech community to kind of get behind in what you're doing in some way, that you need to build a broader kind of army of armies, so to speak?
Yeah. Absolutely. This is a unique field because we're doing sociology mixed with the tech field. The tech field I can do all day. I can design a network. We can design some cool identity, blockchain. We can do all these things. But who's going to conduct the experiments that say this works, this doesn't work?
Okay.
And what I was just going to add, and what I am, and really inside of this is basically the blade of the spear. Okay, I've got a lot of research into this. We've got the methodologies. We've got the ways that you can fight this stuff online. But this has to be done in between two types of partnerships. One is the public-private partnership, because in private, we can do. You've seen what advertising companies do to test you. Okay,
Happens fast, right?
You see what's done with cross-browser. I mean, just inside of inter-browser interrogation of cookies and that sort of stuff, just on the starting level. Not to talk about Facebook, but where this has to go is I'm putting together a group of super imams in New York City, which help influence about 400 million Muslims internationally. And the idea is that we have to build a counter-narrative on one side that I can help leverage to execute through marketing channels, because this is all marketing, right? And then we have to partner with military in a way to do this. And the longer-term partnerships is figuring out how we do this, not just with marketing groups and communication groups, but what we do with news, what we do with intelligence, and longer-term, how we educate corporations. And to that end, we're putting academic partnerships together as well.
Okay. Well, John, when we were talking, you were expressing some frustration, which I guess you indicated it a little before with your thumbs up, at your ability thus far to get people in the private sector to really join in this effort. Is that
biting my lower lip here? What was an indication of my frustration?
So is it because companies and the private sector doesn't understand it? Is that part of it? Is it because they're reluctant to get involved? What's the impediment?
No. I mean, again, I am just. And again, John can attest to this because his couch is my therapist couch. I go in all the time, and I can only headbutt my way through a bureaucracy. This is the frustrating part of it, and I think we're coming to grips with this as we're becoming integrated between the military and between some of the other efforts that are going on. And again, you can see it happen right now in Silicon Valley with some of the things we have going, that we're just so slow to move. And we can talk about it all day long or whatever else, but it's a sausage making, whatever.
In other words, the government itself is too slow, but then at the same time, the private sector is not jumping up to help either.
Well, no. I mean, I believe that the private sector, again, public-private, whatever else, public being the government side of us, but private being the free enterprise system, is willing to do it. and they're making, they're making technology, they're making advantages, they're making things happen, and we need to integrate it quickly, whatever else, and become a part of it.
Well, also, if you,
I was just going to add, because this is what's going on right now.
what? Yeah. what do you mean?
Outdated marketing, outdated models, working on likes, not conversion.
Well, it's interesting, though, a number of times today, we've talked about a number of topics, but something that's come up quite a few times is Mark Zuckerberg's, overlong essay in February about what he wants Facebook to become long-term. And you got to say, among other things, if you take what he's saying in there seriously, he wants to help you guys.
Right.
I mean, he's making that very clear. Now, exactly what the means would be, how openly he could do it, and also he's got to be careful that he doesn't violate his trust with his own customer, which is a very big deal.
Jump in on John's piece, just is that, so for anybody that is interested, yes, we have a thing called Defense Innovation Unit X, experimental, and it's DIUX. You can look them up. Glad to connect you if you have a great idea. That's what we are looking for, those good ideas to come into our system, and we've set up a system outside of our system to try to bring them in. Where I think we're hurting, from my experience with them, with DARPA and with others, is getting the cutting edge organizations like Mark Zuckerberg to come on board and say, I will fight through your bureaucracy and partner with you.
And this is what I was going to say, is that it's Madison Valleywood, I think was the term that was given last year. They got everybody together, and between advertising, between marketing, Apple and Twitter, and everybody was sitting at the table with us and having these conversations with government leaders about how to do it. And I mean that's it. I mean we're all linked.
Have you ever
right?
had those meetings?
Well, I mean, I've had an opportunity with us. I think I talked to Oz about this. I talked to him as well with us. There's a period of time when I was actually doing a little bit of work with Twitter, and we talked about here was my caveat to Twitter at the time, whatever. So they just gone through. So Twitter had gone through their IPO, and they were $41 billion, right? Instantly, money rained from Goldman Sachs and everywhere else, and so suddenly a bunch of kids who were sitting around, forgive me for my shoes here or whatever else, but we're sitting around in flip-flops and sandals, whatever else, sitting in an office, suddenly had multitude of money raining on them, plus an international a stage by which they were doing things. At the same time, there was a revolution that was going on in Iran. And so suddenly, there's people on the streets, there's a green revolution that's happening in Iran, or whatever else, and the Twitter feed drops. And they're all sitting around, and everybody's worried, whatever else. The National Security Council sitting around in Washington, D.C., whatever else, and the feed goes dry, and they're waiting for the feeds, they're waiting for the tweets, they're waiting for these things to happen, or whatever else, and nothing's happening. It was like, oh my God, what the hell's going on? Well, they were just down for servicing for 30 minutes. Wait a minute, you guys are international players. I mean, you are akin to any, Ministry of Information for one of the top 5 countries in the whole globe, and yet you're down for the count. I mean, so that.
Well, they turned it back on at the request of the U.S. State Department.
Well, that's it. Again, what I'm getting at is that's where we have to be sitting at that table. But that's a tough thing too. Again, because I've espoused my own libertarian values about what I do or don't give as a person. Whatever else we're willing to give up, and that's the mix.
But to that Madison Valleywood issue, and there's 2 other pieces inside of there. One is that the social media platforms and a lot of the marketers do not want to touch the liability issues in this, because post San Bernardino, Facebook's getting sued. And secondarily, it's the same problem that you had when John Kerry got everyone in Hollywood together last year and said, we need more favorable content on Muslims. And you had a whole room of maybe about 50 people saying, maybe we should talk to some Muslims.
Imagine that.
Okay, so and so it's like you've got people like me here. We can speak to not just the cultural aspects of this, but even when it comes to this side of it, there's maybe me and there's 1 or 2 other people who are doing this kind of research and bringing it to the table. And what we're looking to do is we're looking to partner to figure out how we solve it on this side, but it's also solving it on this side.
Okay, let me risk offending quite a few people in the room, but probably pleasing you because all day long people have said negative things about Trump. But one of the interesting things about Trump that I think he has demonstrated is he has no concern about the way things were done before. Right? He seems to be very eager to break through and just try new stuff, right? So given what you've been saying before about all the bureaucracy and slow-paced, and I know you you can say what you will, but Oz worked with the Trump campaign. He's a Trump supporter.
And then hold on, I did big data, and no, we have to qualify what I did.
Okay, the
I
point
did
is,
big data. We did
all I'm
social
asking,
media
I don't want
targeting.
to try to get you in trouble, Oz, but I'm just, all I'm saying
You
is,
can't just open that Pandora's box.
okay, whatever. Okay,
I got guns, I'll defend you.
okay. The question is simply this, could it be a possible good thing that maybe in this current administration, you could cut through some of that bureaucracy and try some new stuff because let's say, if there's one thing Trump has said he's committed to doing, it's fighting terrorism, right? So is there any evidence of movement there?
So, I mean, I would say we've already got movement. We've got, what is it, the paper just broke the story about what NYU has been doing for the military, or NSA and some others, over the last few, just broke, a couple weeks ago. So we've
Summarize that, 'cause I don't know
we've
what
got
that-
some great partnerships for what universities in this region are doing with the military or with the DOD to advance research. So they don't, and that's kind of where our sweet spot is, and that's where this administration's already started. Previous administration had already kind of opened the doors. Is sometimes you think about doing work with the military and you think of it as operations. They're going to go do something with it and slaughter people, and we do that. But the other thing we do is we do research. So we actually say, here's our problem, here's what we're working on, this is the shaping we're trying to do, would you work on it as a research topic?
Well,
and once we get into that space, we have a lot more room to partner.
We know the Pentagon does technology-related work because they invented the internet, for God's sakes. I mean,
I thought that was Al Gore.
let's remember that. No, I mean, it is
Yeah.
true. The military invented the internet. That's not something to forget. I think we should get comments and questions. Okay, over here. Can we get a mic over there? Do we only have one working mic or what? I'm sorry, this guy's getting so much exercise.
We lost one in action.
Thank you for your good exercise.
Hi, so Rich Robbins. Two things I'm hearing. One is that the military is very bureaucratic and slow. And second, that this is basically a marketing campaign that we're fighting against ISIS. Why is this being done by the military?
Why is or isn't?
Why would the military be conducting a marketing campaign, which, if anything, seems like more of a diplomacy effort?
It's not a diplomacy. So what had happened was it used to be terrorism, war, marketing, okay? And I'm talking to two universities right now about just creating new curricula for this, because what terrorism is marketing, advertising, communications, psychology. They've got technology in there now too, because they're getting into the ransomware space. And Bitcoin, because that's how they sell human capital.
And killing people. Yeah.
The killing people is almost secondary to a lot of what's going on here.
Let me say, so the Department of State has a wonderful program called CVE. It was the Obama administration created it in about 2010, and it's actually gained a little bit of weight. But this is, back to the bureaucratic side of it also, and I wish I had more answers than just complaints. But, it comes down to rice bowls and other things, and the Department of State is famous for saying all the time, well, we don't have as many counselors as the Army has band members.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, Bob Gates stood up there and said, hey, I'm prepared to go ahead and give you a portion, a tranche of our entire budget for you, the state, to go ahead and leave your white-shoed halls and your embassies and go out and, conduct in bureaucracy, excuse me, not bureaucracy, forgive me, I'm just inundated with it, but engage in diplomacy, in the countries that we're involved in. And they were unwilling to take it on.
But wait a minute. What's the acronym?
Oh,
Countering violent extremism.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Thank you for that, because that's
Yeah,
kind of, we don't like acronyms that are not fun.
But so again, back just to answer your question, whatever else, I think in the short term, whatever else, is that state is working on it, and we're getting better at working together in the interagency process, and I think it'll bode well, because I'm an optimist.
But there's private sector folks like us applying for the CVE, but this is also a labyrinthical process.
But also, as just John's point, and both Johns have talked about, the public-private partnership. We've heard a lot today on the stage about the problem of silos, the problem of departments and functional areas of companies not cooperating, and that the effective strategy and the effective way to understand the world and also to accomplish innovation of all sorts is to break through the historic barriers and silos and really work across. So really, we need state and Army and private sector and marketing. I mean, let's face it, the Army has the most money. I mean, they may not think they have enough, but they're getting more than ever in this administration, so maybe that's just the answer. I mean,
Well, let me just throw in this.
The Pentagon has never had a huge problem getting money.
No, but let me back up. Is this? I've spent time with the State Department in Africa and Afghanistan, and God bless them, love them for what they do. But the organization just has a different philosophy, right? They're working on diplomacy. It has a certain pace, has a certain rate. I am right now, as a military officer, looking at 1,000 cadets. We graduate in a week, and they're going to go around the world to go wherever whatever administration we voted in wants them to go, and that's where they're going to go spend their lives. I, as a senior officer, would like to shape the conditions so that when they get there, it doesn't happen. I'll always remember my first company command, 82nd Airborne Division. I'm ready to go jump into Haiti. And out of the 82nd, my job going into Haiti was actually to slaughter people in a region to stop them from doing what they were doing. And thank goodness, Carter flew in and landed his plane and wouldn't leave until he converted Haiti to a different philosophy. And then instead of us going in 82nd, we sent in a 10th Mountain Division, much lighter, easier, kinder force, and we did it very differently. We would like to, it's different. The internet didn't exist back then, not like this. Now we're in a new place. I want to shape.
Phase zero.
I want to shape
shaping.
things.
It's phase zero.
Yeah.
You just ask a question, pass it to him, if we have time, but no offense, but
So at the Paley Center a couple of months ago.
Rick Smolin, go
Sorry,
ahead.
Rick Smolin. At the Paley Center a couple of months ago, there were two very interesting young women, one from Facebook and one from Google. Eric Schmidt had created something called Jigsaw, and they were explaining that the same people that you mentioned, Odds, that were searching certain terms that identified people that were feeling disenfranchised and might be attracted by the propaganda that ISIS has been creating very effectively, that Google is creating counter-narratives. And could you talk a little bit about what both Facebook and Google are doing?
Here's my problem with Jigsaw. Jigsaw has come across as very smug in terms of understanding not only Muslims, but understanding ISIS converts and understanding this cult methodology and what motivates them. And they don't. Because what you're not seeing is you should be seeing different search results. You should be seeing different advertising. You should be seeing different marketing. What the problem I think a lot of these companies have, and this is what we see from startup to enterprise a lot of times, is the startup makes something for the enterprise, and the enterprise is like, what is that? And that's the same thing that's happening in this field, is that they have made tools for advertisers, for advertising. But that doesn't have anything to do with countering violent extremism, nor is it actually focused enough. I mean, I put the call out to the entire room. Feel free to reach out to us because we're working on a social cyber maturity model and a ton of education. What I want to do is nothing but run around and preach the gospel of like, here's how you stop it, here's how you educate people on it, here's how you train people to do it, because this is not—
You're good at that, my friend.
Yeah, this is not a one-man show, this is not a three-man show, this is a million people show.
Now,
okay?
I want to support the smug statement, but differently, is that scientifically, they've not done the causal factors through. So again, social science right now, cognitive science,